The dim glow of neon lights flickered across the worn wooden bar, casting long shadows over the cluster of patrons nursing their drinks in the dusty roadside dive on the edge of the Nevada desert. It was one of those forgotten spots where truckers and wanderers sought refuge from the endless highway, the air thick with the scent of stale beer and engine grease. Outside, the wind howled through the scrub brush, carrying the faint rumble of distant thunder. Inside, the jukebox hummed a low country ballad, but the mood shattered like glass when the door swung open with a creak. A little girl, no more than 7, stumbled in alone, her small frame shivering in a threadbare dress smeared with dirt, her eyes wide with terror, darted around the room as tears carved clean paths down her grimy cheeks. She clutched a crumpled photo in her tiny fist, the kind that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. The bar fell into a hush, conversations dying as heads turned. One burly patron snorted, muttering something about strays, but no one moved. The bartender, a grizzled man with a face like cracked leather, paused mid-pour, his rag forgotten on the counter. The child was a ghost in this den of hardened souls, vulnerable, out of place, her presence a raw wound that no one wanted to acknowledge. She scanned the faces, desperation etching deeper lines into her young brow. That's when her gaze locked on him. A lone biker at the far end of the bar, his broad shoulders hunched over a half-empty glass of whiskey. He was in his late 40s, built like a weathered oak, with a leather vest patched from years of road wear and a beard streaked with silver. Scars traced his knuckles, and a faded tattoo peeked from under his sleeve, a soaring eagle clutching a shield, inked in the bold lines of a promise long buried. His name was Ethan Harlan, though few knew it anymore. To the world, he was just another drifter chasing ghosts on 2 wheels. Ethan didn't look up at first, his eyes fixed on the amber liquid, as if it held answers to questions he'd stopped asking. But the girl didn't hesitate. She weaved through the legs of the stools, her sneakers scuffing the sticky floor, until she stood before him. The bar watched in stunned silence as she reached out, her trembling fingers brushing the edge of his tattoo. The touch was feather-light, reverent, like touching a relic. "That's my daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking the tension like a crack in ice. "This eagle. He promised he'd come back for me. He said it would keep me safe." The photo fluttered from her hand, landing face up on the bar, a faded snapshot of a younger man in army fatigues. The same tattoo stark on his arm, grinning beside a woman who looked just like this child. Ethan's glass froze midway to his lips. The world narrowed to that small hand on his skin, the weight of her words pulling him back to a desert half a world away, where dust and gunfire had forged unbreakable bonds. He set the glass down slowly, the clink echoing like a gunshot. The bar held its breath, even the jukebox seemed to stutter. No one spoke, no one dared. Ethan's eyes met hers, and in that moment, fragments of a life he'd locked away resurfaced. 20 years ago, in the scorched sands of a forgotten war, he'd made a vow to his best friend Jake, brothers in arms, closer than blood. Jake had been the one with the fire, the one who dreamed of a family waiting stateside. "If anything happens to me, Ethan," he'd said one night under the stars, pressing a dog tag into his palm, "you look after mine. Promise me. That eagle on your arm? It's our shield. For them." Ethan had nodded, the words sealing like ink on skin. But Jake never came home. His truck flipped on a rain-slick road 6 months after discharge, the official report calling it an accident. Ethan had buried the grief, ridden away from it all, telling himself promises faded like tattoos under the sun. Now, this girl, Lily, as the photo's faded inscription read, stood as living proof they didn't. Her mother, gone too soon from illness, had left her in the care of distant relatives who, whispers in the bar would later reveal, had turned her out like yesterday's trash when debts piled up. Lily had hitched rides, followed rumors of bikers who honored old codes, until instinct or fate led her here. Ethan's chest tightened, the old ache blooming fresh. He slid off the stool, kneeling to her level, the creak of his knees lost in the hush. "Who told you about the eagle, kid?" His voice was gravel rough but gentle, like wind over dunes. She pointed to the photo. "Mommy said my daddy's friend had one just like it. He'd ride in on his bike and make everything right. You're him, aren't you? The one who keeps promises." The bar's silence deepened, a collective held breath. Ethan glanced at the faces around them. Hardened men who knew the weight of unspoken oaths. He could walk away, blame it on coincidence, let the road swallow another regret. But Jake's eyes stared back from that photo, and the girl's trust pierced deeper than any bullet. "I am," he said finally, the words tasting like redemption. "And I'm keeping that promise, starting now." As he scooped her up, her small arms wrapping around his neck, a murmur rippled through the crowd. The bartender slid over a glass of milk without a word, and outside, the first drops of rain pattered on the gravel. Ethan carried Lily to the door, the weight of her no burden at all, but as the neon sign buzzed behind them, he knew this was just the spark. Word would spread through the network of riders he'd left behind, the Iron Vow MC, a brotherhood scattered but unbreakable. Jake's daughter had found her shield, and Ethan had found his reason to ride again. By dawn, engines would roar, and old promises would thunder back to life. The desert night stretched endless, but for the first time in years, Ethan felt the pull of something greater than solitude. Lily's head rested on his shoulder, her breathing steady now, as if the eagle had already begun to guard her. The road ahead was uncertain, shadowed by those who'd failed her before. Corrupt guardians hiding behind badges, systems that chewed up the innocent. But Ethan had faced worse. Honor wasn't given, it was claimed, mile by mile. They stepped into the rain, his bike waiting like a faithful steed under the overcast sky. The engine growled to life, a beast awakening, and as they pulled onto the highway, the bar's lights faded in the rear view. This ride wasn't just for survival. It was for justice, the kind that mended what war and loss had torn apart. And deep down, Ethan knew. The girl who touched his tattoo had just rewritten his story. If you're watching this, hit that like button if a stranger's kindness ever changed your path. Share in the comments what promise you've kept against all odds. The rain-slicked highway cut through the Nevada night like a vein of black silk, headlights slicing the downpour as Ethan's Harley thrummed beneath them. Lily clung to his back, her small hands fisted in his vest, the warmth of her cheek pressed against the leather shielding her from the chill. The engine's roar drowned out the storm, a steady pulse that echoed the beat of Ethan's resolve. He hadn't planned this. Hell, he hadn't planned on anything beyond the next mile marker, but the girl's touch on his tattoo had cracked open a vault he'd sealed shut years ago. Jake's voice echoed in his mind, gravelly and urgent from those foxhole nights. "Keep 'em safe, brother. That's the vow." They rode for an hour, the desert blurring into shadowed mesas under the relentless sky. Ethan's thoughts churned like the tires on wet asphalt. Lily's story had spilled out in fragments during the ride. Her mother fading away in a rundown clinic, leaving her with an aunt who promised care but delivered neglect. "They said I was too much trouble," she'd whispered over the wind, her voice tiny against the growl of the bike. "But Mommy said you'd come, the man with the eagle." Ethan gripped the handlebars tighter, knuckles whitening. Those relatives sounded like the kind who'd sell out family for a quick buck, hiding behind court papers and false smiles. He'd seen it before, in the hollow eyes of vets who'd lost everything to the system's grind. As the first hints of dawn bled pink across the horizon, Ethan pulled off at a weathered motel on the outskirts of Reno, its sign flickering like a dying firefly. The parking lot was empty, save for a rusted pickup, and the air smelled of wet sage and cooling engines. He killed the ignition. the sudden silence amplifying Lily's soft sigh of relief. Scooping her up, he carried her inside, her weight a reminder of fragility in a world built for breaking. The clerk, a wiry woman named Grace, with tired eyes and a name tag pinned crookedly, barely glanced up from her crossword. "One room," Ethan said, sliding cash across the counter. No cards, no traces. He knew better than to leave a trail. In the dim room, with its faded floral wallpaper and a bed that sagged like old regrets, Ethan sat Lily down and rummaged through his saddlebags for a spare jacket. It dwarfed her, but she wrapped it around herself like a cape, her eyes lighting up with a child's wonder. "You're really him," she said, tracing the eagle on his arm again, this time without fear. "Daddy's friend. Will you take me home?" Ethan knelt, the floorboards creaking under his boots. "Home's what we make it, kid. But first we get you safe. Tell me everything. About your aunt. Where you've been." As she spoke, halting at first, then in a rush, pieces fell into place. The aunt, a woman named Victoria who'd inherited custody after the mother's passing, lived in a trailer park outside Carson City. But whispers from the road suggested trouble. Overdue bills, shady visitors, and Lily cast out like an unwanted pup. "She locked me out one night," Lily admitted, her voice dropping. "Said I could fend for myself. I walked till I found a trucker who brought me toward the bar. He said bikers help their own." Ethan's jaw set, a familiar anger simmering low. This wasn't just neglect. It reeked of something deeper, the kind of corruption that festered in small towns where badges protected the wrong people. He pulled out his old burner phone. The screen cracked from too many drops and dialed a number he hadn't touched in years. The line crackled, then connected. "Noah," he said when the voice answered, gruff from sleep. "It's Ethan. Need you to rally the old crew. Iron Vow. Got a situation. Jake's girl. Yeah, that promise. Meet me at the crossroads by noon." Noah, a former squad mate with a laugh like thunder and scars from the same sands, didn't hesitate. "On it, brother? How many we talking?" Ethan's gaze flicked to Lily, now dozing against the pillow, her face peaceful for the first time. "All of 'em. Tell 'em it's time to ride for honor." He hung up, the weight of brotherhood settling like dust after a storm. The Iron Vow MC had splintered after the war, some chasing adrenaline, others burying themselves in civilian lies. But bonds like theirs didn't rust. They'd gather, engines roaring from scattered corners of the West, drawn by the call of an old oath. By mid-morning, the sun burned through the clouds, turning the motel lot into a haze of steam. Ethan stepped out for coffee from a vending machine that wheezed like an asthmatic, leaving Lily with a coloring book scavenged from the office. That's when the black SUV rolled in, tires crunching gravel with deliberate menace. Two men emerged, suits too crisp for this dust bowl, one with a badge glinting on his belt, the other built like a linebacker with eyes that scanned like predators. The cop, a slick type named Detective Ryan, flashed a photo of Lily. "Heard a kid matching this description hitched a ride last night. You seen her?" Ethan leaned against his bike, casual but coiled, the scent of hot metal rising from the exhaust. "Plenty of kids on the road. What's it to you?" Ryan's partner shifted, hand resting near his hip, but Ethan met their stares level. He'd danced this dance before, authorities turning blind eyes to the powerful, cracking down on the lost. "Custody matter," Ryan said, voice oily. "Aunt's reported her missing. Interfering could land you in hot water." The air thickened, tension humming like a live wire. Ethan could smell the lie, sharp as ozone before lightning. Victoria hadn't reported Jack. This was a shakedown, guardians circling to reclaim their pawn. "Tell her aunt the girl's with family now," Ethan replied, his tone even, the eagle tattoo flexing as he crossed his arms. "Real family." Ryan's eyes narrowed, but before he could push, the distant growl of engines swelled. A convoy approaching, dust plumes rising like signals from the horizon. The detective backed off, muttering into his radio. The SUV peeling out with a spray of pebbles. Ethan watched them go, heart pounding steady. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Who were they?" she asked, clutching the jacket tighter. "Folks who forgot what promises mean," Ethan said, lifting her onto the bike. "But we're reminding them." As the first bikes crested the rise, Noah in the lead, flanked by a dozen riders in weathered leathers, their faces etched with the same quiet determination. The group swelled. Engines idled like a pride of lions, the vibration shaking the ground. This wasn't a gang, it was a shield, forged in fire and fueled by loyalty. They rode out together, Lily sandwiched safely between Ethan and Noah, the Nevada sun climbing high. The road twisted toward Carson City, shadows lengthening with each mile. Whispers of the aunt's ties to local crooks surfaced in Noah's briefing. Debts to enforcers who'd use a child as leverage. But Ethan felt the shift inside him, the old ghosts aligning into purpose. Jake's daughter wasn't just cargo, she was the spark reigniting a legacy of silent justice. Hours blurred into the rhythm of the ride, the wind whipping tales of redemption unspoken. Yet ahead loomed the trailer park, a nest of deceit where truths would clash like chrome on concrete. Ethan glanced back at Lily's smile, faint but real, and knew the cost of honor, not in blood, but in the unyielding stand against the dark. The convoy thundered on, a promise made manifest, ready to claim what corruption had stolen. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy sliced through the midday heat like a blade through parchment. 20 Harleys now rumbling in tight formation, their chrome flanks glinting under the relentless Nevada sun. Dust devils swirled in their wake, kicked up by tires that had chewed endless miles, carrying riders who'd answered the call without question. Ethan led the pack, Lily's small form secured in a makeshift sidecar, rigged from spare parts, a touch of ingenuity from Noah, who rode shotgun on his own beast of a bike. The girl's eyes widened at the thunder of engines, her fingers tracing the eagle tattoo on Ethan's arm, as if it were a talisman warding off the world's sharp edges. The air hummed with the scent of hot rubber and sun-baked asphalt, a symphony of loyalty that drowned out the doubts whispering in Ethan's mind. He'd ridden with these men before, in the blistering chaos of war zones where promises were the only currency that didn't devalue. Noah flanked him now, his face a map of old wounds, eyes sharp behind aviator shades. "Cruise solid, Ethan," Noah shouted over the roar, wind tugging at his bandana. "James and Daniel pulled in from Utah at dawn, said Jake's ghost would haunt them if they sat this out. We've got eyes on the aunt's setup. Trailer park's a viper's nest, tied to some low-rent lenders who lean on folks like her. Word is, they want the kid back as collateral for debts she racked up after the mum's passing." Ethan nodded, jaw tight against the buffeting gusts. Collateral. The word soured like bad whiskey, evoking memories of soldiers bartered in backroom deals, lives reduced to ledgers. Lily's story had filled in more gaps during the motel's quiet hours. Victoria, her aunt, had swooped in like a shadow after the funeral, promising stability but delivering chains. "She took my mommy's necklace," Lily had murmured that morning, her voice a fragile thread. "Said it was for bills, but the men who came at night, they scared me." No details, just the echo of fear in her eyes. Enough to fuel the fire in Ethan's gut. This wasn't family, it was predation masked as protection, the kind that thrived where justice grew thin. As the miles unspooled, the landscape shifted from barren flats to the ragged outskirts of Carson City, where saguaros gave way to chain-link fences and faded billboards hawking dreams long sold out. The trailer park loomed ahead. A sprawl of rusted metal boxes huddled like forgotten relics under a haze of smog. Ethan signaled the slowdown, engines dropping to a low growl as they rolled in single file, the vibration shaking loose pebbles from the gravel paths. Residents peeked from curtains, wary faces etched by hard living, while a few dogs barked half-heartedly from porches sagging under their own weight. The air here carried the tang of rust and regret, mingled with the faint, acrid bite of something cooking on a makeshift grill. They parked in a loose circle near Victoria's unit, a double wide with peeling paint and a chain dangling from the door like a broken vow. Ethan dismounted first, helping Lily down with a gentleness that belied his scarred hands. She clung to his leg, the oversized jacket trailing like a cape, her gaze fixed on the door as if it might swallow her whole. Noah and the others fanned out, not aggressive but present, a wall of leather and resolve that spoke volumes without a word. James, a broad-shouldered vet with a limp from an old IED, leaned against his bike, arms crossed. "We do this clean, brothers," he rumbled. "No shadows, no storms, just truth." The door creaked open before Ethan could knock, revealing Victoria, a woman in her 40s, sharp-featured and hollow-eyed, clad in a faded robe that hung loose on her frame. She froze at the sight of them, her hand fluttering to her throat where a cheap pendant dangled, glinting falsely. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, voice laced with bravado that cracked at the edges. Her eyes darted to Lily, narrowing like a trap springing shut. "You? I told you to stay gone. Cops are already looking—" "Save it," Ethan cut in, his tone low and even, the kind that carried the weight of deserts crossed. He stepped forward, Lily peeking from behind him, the girl's presence a silent accusation. "Jake's daughter doesn't belong in your debt pit. You were supposed to protect her, not pawn her off." Victoria's face twisted, a flicker of guilt warring with defiance. She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting backup, then straightened, folding her arms. "Blood's blood. Court's on my side. You bikers think you can just ride in and play hero? Those men you heard about, they don't take kindly to interference." The words hung heavy, stirring murmurs from the crew. Noah shifted, his hand resting on the handlebars, but Ethan held up a palm, calm, always calm, like the eye of a gathering storm. Inside, doubt gnawed. Was this redemption, or just another war, trading one loss for another? Jake's promise echoed, a tether, pulling him forward. "Hand over her things," he said. "The necklace, clothes, whatever's hers. We're leaving with her, legal or not. Iron vow doesn't break oaths." Victoria hesitated, the silence stretching taut as a bowstring. Then, from the shadows of the trailer, a figure emerged. A burly man with grease-stained hands and a scowl that screamed enforcer. He was one of them, the lender's muscle, eyes flicking over the bikers like he was sizing up a fight. "Trouble?" he growled, stepping onto the porch, a tire iron dangling casually from his belt. The air thickened, the scent of tension sharp as ozone. Lily whimpered, pressing closer to Ethan, her small hand finding the eagle again. Noah's voice cut through, steady as rebar. "Only if you make it. Walk away, friend. This ain't your debt." The man paused, assessing the odds. 20 riders, united by something deeper than ink or chrome. His gaze lingered on Lily, a shadow of unease crossing his features, perhaps a memory of his own buried regrets. Finally, he shrugged, backing into the trailer with a mutter. Victoria watched him go, then deflated, rummaging inside before tossing out a small bundle, a locket, some worn clothes, a stuffed bear threadbare from hugs. "Take her," she said bitterly, voice breaking. "But you can't outrun the law forever." It wasn't surrender, not fully, just a crack in the facade, hinting at the fear that had twisted her into this. Ethan caught the bundle, nodding once, no triumph in his eyes. Mercy, not vengeance. That was the code. He turned to Lily, kneeling to her level. "Ready, kid, home's waiting." As they mounted up, the engines igniting in a chorus that rattled the trailers, Victoria watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. a mix of relief and loss. The convoy pulled out, dust rising like a veil, leaving the park behind. But Ethan knew the shadows lingered, that enforcer's retreat felt too easy, and whispers from Noah's contacts hinted at bigger players, corrupt officials, turning blind eyes for a cut. The road curved toward Reno, where allies waited with papers and plans, but the real battle brewed in the grey spaces of the law. Lily's laughter bubbled up over the wind, light as rain on parched earth as she clutched the bear. Ethan felt the weight lift, if only a fraction, the promise alive, pulsing like the heartbeat of the ride. Yet ahead, dilemmas loomed. Confront the system head-on, or weave through its cracks with the cunning of old soldiers. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, and Ethan rode into them, the brotherhood at his back a shield against the gathering dark. Honor wasn't a destination, it was the miles between betrayals, each one a step toward mending what time had frayed. The sun hung low over the Nevada horizon, painting the sky in strokes of bruised orange and deepening purple as the convoy thundered toward Reno. Engines growled in unison, a mechanical heartbeat that synced with the pulse of Ethan's determination, the vibration traveling up his arms like a current of resolve. Lily rode nestled between him and Noah, her small hands gripping the edges of the sidecar, the stuffed bear tucked under one arm like a sentinel. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying the faint, sweet scent of wildflowers crushed under tires, a rare softness amid the grit of the road. Behind them, the trailer park faded into a smudge of dust. But Ethan couldn't shake the unease coiling in his gut, the aunt's bitter parting words, the enforcer's too-quick retreat. It felt like the calm before a sandstorm, the kind that buried men whole. Noah rode close, his bike's exhaust mingling with the others in a haze that blurred the rear view. "We got a safe house lined up in Reno," he called out, voice cutting through the roar. "Old Buddy from the unit runs a garage, off the grid, no questions. James is calling in a favor with a lawyer who owes the vow. Papers to make this official. Keep the suits off our backs." Ethan nodded, eyes scanning the mirrors for tails. The crew had swelled to 25 now, riders peeling off highways from as far as Arizona, drawn by texts and calls that invoked Jake's name like a sacred summons, faces familiar from foxholes and forgotten rides. Daniel, with his quiet intensity, Andrew nursing a perpetual cigar, each one a thread in the tapestry of loyalty that war had woven. Lily shifted, her voice piping up against the wind. "Is this what Daddy meant? Riding with the eagles?" She pointed to the tattoo, now a beacon in the fading light, its lines stark against Ethan's sun-leathered skin. He glanced down, the memory of Jake's ink gun buzzing in some distant echo, the same night they'd etched their vows under a canvas tent, stars mocking the fragility of life. "Yeah, kid," Ethan replied, his tone rough but warm, like gravel smoothed by rain. He meant standing tall when the world's trying to knock you down. Family isn't just blood, it's the ones who show up. The words settled over him, a balm on old scars, but they also stirred the doubt he'd buried. Was he honoring Jake, or just chasing ghosts to fill his own hollows? The road had a way of stripping illusions bare, mile by unforgiving mile. As twilight deepened, the convoy crested a rise overlooking Reno's sprawl, neon veins pulsing against the dark, the silhouette of casinos like jagged teeth. They veered off the interstate onto a service road, the pavement giving way to cracked asphalt, flanked by Joshua trees clawing at the sky. The garage waited at the end, a squat concrete bunker with bays wide enough for semis, floodlights casting harsh pools that danced with shadows. Ethan killed his engine first, the sudden quiet amplifying the creak of cooling metal and the distant hum of the city. Lily yawned, rubbing her eyes, as he lifted her down, her sneakers crunching on loose gravel that smelled of oil and earth. Inside, the air was thick with the tang of grease and welding sparks. Samuel, the owner, A wiry vet with a prosthetic leg and a grin that split his beard, clasped Ethan's forearm in a grip like iron. "Heard the call, brother. Bunks in the back, chow on the stove. Lawyers en route. Emily Hargrove, sharp as a bayonet, specializes in custody messes." The crew dispersed, some grabbing tools to tinker with bikes under the hum of fluorescent tubes, others settling around a scarred table laden with sandwiches and steaming coffee. Laughter rippled low, tales of old runs exchanged like currency, the bond re-knitting in the glow of shared purpose. Lily perched on a stool, munching an apple, her eyes bright as she watched the men, her unexpected uncles, shields in leather and steel. But peace fractured like thin ice when headlights pierced the gloom outside, not the friendly sweep of allies, but the staccato flash of blues. 2 squad cars rolled up, gravel spitting under tires, followed by that same black SUV from the motel. Detective Ryan stepped out, flanked by uniforms, and the enforcer from the trailer, his bulk casting a long shadow. The air turned electric, the scent of tension sharp as gunpowder. "Harlan," Ryan drawled, badge catching the light like a false promise. "This little parade ends now. Girl's aunt filed a formal claim, interstate kidnapping. Step aside, or we cuff the lot of you." Ethan rose slowly, positioning himself between Lily and the door, the crew coalescing behind him without a word, silent sentinels, hands loose but ready. Noah's jaw clenched, but Ethan shot him a look. Steady. "Kidnapping, that's a stretch for fulfilling a dying man's oath." He kept his voice level, the weight of eyes on him like desert heat. Lily peeked out, her face paling at the sight of the enforcer, who avoided her gaze, shifting uncomfortably. Ryan smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was the flicker of something off, a hesitation that spoke of strings pulled from higher up. Samuel leaned in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. "This ain't your jurisdiction, detective. Private property. You got a warrant or just bad manners?" Ryan's partner fidgeted, radio crackling with static, while the enforcer muttered under his breath, eyes darting to the bikes like he knew the odds had shifted. Inside Ethan's mind, the dilemma churned. Fight here, risk escalation and scars on Lily's world, or parley, buying time for the lawyer. Jake's promise wasn't about brawls. It was about justice, the slow grind that outlasted fists. "Talk to the aunt," Ethan said finally, stepping forward just enough to draw their focus. "Ask why she locked a 7-year-old out in the night. Or why her debts involve scaring kids half to death. We're not running, we're claiming what's right." The words hung, a challenge wrapped in calm. Ryan's facade cracked, a bead of sweat tracing his temple despite the cooling air. Whispers from the crew hinted at leverage. Noah's contact had dug up dirt on the detective, ties to those same lenders, badges greased for silence. The enforcer cleared his throat, voice low. Maybe we talk terms. No need for this to go south." It was a crack, small but real, the moral weight of Lily's trusting eyes tipping the scales. Ryan hesitated, glancing at his radio as if waiting for orders that didn't come, then backed toward his car. "This isn't over, Harlan. Feds'll hear about it." The vehicles retreated, tail lights winking into the night, leaving the garage in ringing silence. Ethan exhaled, the tension uncoiling like a spring. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Did we win?" He knelt, meeting her gaze. "Not yet, kid, but we're fighting clean. That's the real victory." The crew murmured approval, the air lightening with the clink of tools resuming. Emily arrived minutes later, a poised woman in her 30s with a briefcase and eyes that missed nothing, poring over documents by lamplight. Plans formed, petitions, affidavits invoking Jake's will, a network of witnesses from the vow to testify to the neglect. But Ethan knew the shadows lingered. Corruption didn't yield easy, and tomorrow's road might demand harder choices. As the group bunked down, the garage a fortress of snores and flickering bulbs, Ethan sat watch with Lily asleep beside him, her hand on the eagle once more. Redemption wasn't a single ride. It was the quiet hours, the stands against the tide. The night deepened, stars pricking the sky like promises etched in ink, and Ethan felt the pull stronger than ever. Honor reclaimed, one ethical step at a time. If this tale of loyalty in the face of corruption moves you, hit that like button to show your support for stories that honor the unbreakable bonds we choose. The Reno night wrapped the garage in a velvet hush, broken only by the occasional sputter of a cooling engine and the low murmur of voices plotting under the harsh glare of work lamps. Ethan paced the oil-stained concrete, his boots echoing softly, the scent of stale coffee and machine oil clinging to his clothes like a second skin. Lily slept soundly on a cot in the corner, her chest rising and falling in the rhythm of untroubled dreams. The stuffed bear clutched tight against her chest. The eagle tattoo on Ethan's arm itched faintly, as if Jake's spirit were urging him onward. A silent reminder that promises weren't kept in the light of day alone, but in the shadowed hours where choices carved deepest. Emily Hargrove sat at the scarred workbench, papers spread like a battlefield map, her pen scratching notes with the precision of a surgeon. She was a force, mid-30s, with sharp green eyes that had stared down courtrooms filled with indifferent judges. Her dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. "The aunt's claim is flimsy," she said, glancing up at Ethan and Noah, who leaned against a toolbox nearby. "Jake's will mentioned you as guardian in extremis, Ethan. Vague, but enough to build on. Witnesses from the vow can attest to the neglect, locked out, signs of distress. We'll file for emergency custody tomorrow, paint Victoria as unfit. But the detective, Ryan's got pull. Local ties to those lenders suggest he's shielding them for a cut." Noah grunted, crossing his arms over his broad chest, the faint scar on his jaw catching the light. A souvenir from the same war that had bound them. "We smelled that rat at the motel. Enforcer backing him up. That's no coincidence. If we push too hard, they escalate. Feds, maybe even a raid." The crew had settled into watches, James tinkering with a chain drive in the bay, Daniel nursing a thermos by the door, their presence a quiet fortress. Laughter had faded hours ago, replaced by the weight of strategy, each man weighing the cost of this ride, not just for Lily, but for the code that had pulled them from their scattered lives. Ethan stopped pacing, his gaze drifting to Lily. The girl's trust was a fragile flame, kindled by his vow, but flickering against the winds of doubt. He'd seen brothers break under less, the war's ghosts whispering that honor was a fool's chain, dragging you back to the fire you'd escaped. "We don't back down," he said finally, voice low and steady, like the hum of an idling Harley. "Jake didn't ride into that storm for half measures. We expose the rot. Get affidavits from neighbors in the park, anyone who's seen the aunt's visitors. Make it public if we have to." Emily nodded, jotting it down, but her eyes held a warning. "Public means scrutiny, your MC history. It could paint you as vigilantes, not saviors." The words landed like gravel under tires, stirring the old ache in Ethan's chest. Vigilantes. The label had chased the Iron Vow for years. Rumors of rough justice in border towns, helping the forgotten when badges turned away. But it was never about chaos. It was redemption, paying forward the loyalty that had saved lives in foxholes. He thought of Jake's grin in that faded photo, the eagle inked fresh and fierce, a shield against the world's betrayals. "Let 'em talk," Ethan replied, meeting her gaze. "Truth cuts deeper than lies." Noah clapped his shoulder, a silent affirmation, as the group huddled closer, voices weaving plans like threads in a net. Calls to old contacts, a discreet drive-by for evidence, Emily prepping motions to freeze any counterclaims. Dawn crept in, slow, painting the garage windows with grey light that filtered through dust motes dancing like memories. Lily stirred, blinking awake to the smell of fresh brew from Samuel's pot, her smile tentative but real, as Ethan handed her a mug of warm milk. "We staying here forever?" she asked, her small fingers tracing patterns on the mug's steam. He chuckled, the sound rough but genuine, kneeling to her level. "Not forever, kid. Just long enough to make things right. You ever hear your dad talk about the road?" She nodded, eyes lighting up. "He said it was where promises live, free, like the wind." The simplicity pierced him, a child's faith unscarred by the cynicism that had weathered him. In that moment the dilemma sharpened. Push the legal path, risk delays that could drag Lily back into shadows, or act bolder, honoring the vow with the speed of the ride. As the sun climbed, casting long beams across the bays, the crew mobilized. James and Daniel headed out on a scouting run, their bikes vanishing into the morning haze toward the trailer park, engines fading like echoes of resolve. Samuel fired up the grill out back, the sizzle of bacon cutting the tension, a ritual of normalcy amid the storm. Emily buried herself in calls, her voice a blade negotiating with clerks and contacts, while Noah mapped routes on a battered atlas, plotting escapes if the law closed in. Ethan stepped outside for air, the Nevada breeze carrying the faint tang of pine from distant hills, a reminder that freedom wasn't just asphalt, it was the space to stand unbowed. But the peace shattered mid-morning when tires crunched gravel again, not the familiar growl of allies, but the authoritative wail of sirens approaching. Ethan's pulse quickened as he ducked back inside, signaling the crew. 3 vehicles this time, squad cars and the SUV, Ryan at the lead, his face set in grim lines, backed by more uniforms and a social worker clutching a clipboard like a shield. Lily froze, milk forgotten, her eyes seeking Ethan's. "It's okay," he whispered, scooping her up, the warmth of her against his chest an anchor. The door banged open, Ryan striding in with the air of a man holding aces. "Harlan, this circus is over. Federal involvement now. Interstate transport of a minor. We're taking the girl. Resistance means arrests." The garage tensed, bodies shifting like coiled springs, Noah's hand inching toward a wrench, James returning just in time to block the bay. But Ethan held firm, Lily's hand finding the eagle once more, her touch a spark of courage. "On what proof?" he challenged, voice even, buying seconds as Emily emerged from the office, papers in hand. "We've got filings incoming, neglect reports, witnesses. This is protection, not crime." Ryan's eyes flicked to the girl, a flicker of unease betraying the script, perhaps the moral weight of her wide-eyed stare, or the dawning realization that the lender's web was unraveling under scrutiny. The social worker stepped forward, voice softening. "We just want what's best for her." But Lily buried her face in Ethan's neck, whispering, "You're my family now." The words rippled through the room, a quiet thunder. Emily thrust documents forward, citing Jake's will, the aunt's failures, signs of distress, abandonment veiled as care. Ryan hesitated, radio buzzing with unheard orders, the enforcer absent this time, his absence a telltale crack. Whispers from Daniel's recon painted the picture, neighbors talking, Victoria crumbling under questions, the lender's grip slipping as light hit the dark. Tension peaked, breaths held like the pause before a storm breaks. Ryan's jaw worked, then he backed a step. "This goes to hearing, but if you run..." The threat hung, but it rang hollow, the ethical tide turning. As the vehicles retreated once more, dust settling in their wake, the garage exhaled. Emily smiled faintly. "We bought time. Hearing set for tomorrow. Reno family court. Bring the vow. Testimonies seal it." Ethan nodded, setting Lily down. her smile blooming full now, unshadowed. The day wore on in preparation, the crew sharpening their resolve like blades on whetstones. Ethan watched the horizon, the sun arcing toward evening, knowing the climax loomed, not in violence but in the courtroom's stark light, where promises would face the system's forge. Redemption demanded this, the stand, the truth, the unyielding loyalty that outshone corruption's gleam. Lily's laughter echoed as she played with a stray wrench, the sound a promise fulfilled in motion, drawing them all toward the dawn of justice. The courtroom in Reno's family division smelled of polished oak and stale air, the kind that hung heavy with unspoken judgments under fluorescent lights that buzzed like distant hornets. Sunlight slanted through high windows, casting elongated shadows across the wooden benches where the Iron Vow crew sat in a row. Leather vests traded for button-downs, but their presence unyielding, a phalanx of quiet strength. Ethan Harlan stood at the plaintiff's table, his broad frame rigid in a borrowed suit that strained at the shoulders, the eagle tattoo hidden but pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the cuff. Lily sat beside Emily Hargrove, the lawyer's hand resting protectively on the girl's shoulder, her small fingers twisting the locket around her neck, the one reclaimed from Victoria's grasp, its chain glinting like a fragile chain of fate. Judge Harlan, no relation, a stern woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and eyes sharpened by decades of fractured families, gavelled the session to order, the sharp crack echoing off the panelled walls. Outside, the Nevada wind rattled the panes, carrying the faint rumble of idling bikes in the lot, a reminder that the brotherhood waited, engines warm and ready. Victoria slouched at the defense table, flanked by a harried public defender and Detective Ryan, who avoided Ethan's gaze. His suit rumpled as if sleep had eluded him. The air thickened with anticipation, the scent of fresh ink from legal briefs mingling with the subtle tang of tension sweat. Emily opened strong, her voice clear and measured, laying out the case like a roadmap through moral quicksand. Your Honor, this isn't about possession, it's about protection. Lily's father, Jacob Reed, entrusted Ethan with her safety in his final will, a vow forged in the fires of service. The aunt's care, a facade crumbling under neglect, a child locked out in the night, exposed to unsavory influences tied to local debts. We have affidavits, neighbor statements painting a picture of abandonment veiled as guardianship. She slid exhibits across the bench, photos of the trailer, Lily's tear-streaked face from the bar, medical notes hinting at stress without graphic scars. Victoria's lawyer countered weakly, voice quavering as he invoked blood ties and court orders, but the cracks showed. Ryan's testimony faltered when pressed on the missing child report, his words evasive, eyes darting to the back where Noah sat, arms crossed like a sentinel. Routine procedure, Ryan muttered, but Emily pounced, introducing Noah's sourced records. Ties between the detective and the lenders, whispers of overlooked complaints from the trailer park. The judge's brow furrowed, her pen tapping a rhythm of growing doubt. The courtroom hummed with the low shift of bodies, the crew's silence a pressure all its own, loyalty manifesting not in shouts, but in the unblinking support that filled the space. Then came the testimonies, each one a thread weaving the vow into unbreakable steel. Noah took the stand first, his limp from old wounds evident as he swore in, voice gravelly but steady. Jake and Ethan were brothers in the sand, save my hide more times than I count. That eagle, it's our code, shield the innocent, honor the fallen. Lily's got signs of what no kid should, fear from folks who should have been safe harbor. He met the judge's eyes, no embellishment, just the raw truth of shared scars. James followed, his broad frame filling the witness box, recounting the convoy's ride, not as threat but as rescue. We rode for Jake's promise, saw the girl myself, hollow eyes, like vets after a bad op. Aunt's place, reeked of trouble, men lurking like shadows. Daniel spoke next, quiet intensity in every word, detailing the scouting run. Neighbors hushed accounts of nights Lily spent alone, the aunt's visitors bringing tension that seeped like smoke. "It's not vengeance," he said, glancing at Ethan. "It's redemption. For Jake. For her." The judge leaned forward, her expression softening as Lily was called up, the girl perching on a booster with wide eyes, but no tremble. "Do you feel safe with Mr. Ethan?" the judge asked gently. Lily nodded, her voice small but clear as a desert dawn. "He has Daddy's eagle, he promised, Aunt Victoria. She was scared of the bad men, but Ethan makes it better." The words landed soft, yet they pierced. The courtroom falling into a hush, broken only by Victoria's stifled sob from her seat. Ethan's turn came last, the weight of eyes pulling him to the stand like gravity. He swore in, hands steady on the Bible, the scent of the leather from his absent vest lingering in memory. Jake was family, the kind you choose in the worst of it. He made me vow to look after his if he couldn't. I walked away once after his accident, thinking promises fade, but Lily found me, touched that ink, and it all came back. The road's taken pieces of me. But this, keeping her safe from a system that chews up the lost, that's the honor he died believing in. His voice cracked once, raw with the grief he'd buried under miles, but he held the judge's gaze, the eagle shield invisible, yet felt in every syllable. Emily closed with a plea for emergency custody, emphasizing the vow's network as stability, not chaos, but chosen kin. The judge deliberated in chambers, the weight stretching like the endless highway, the crew murmuring encouragements outside the doors. Ethan sat with Lily, her head on his shoulder, the warmth of her acquired victory already. Whispers filtered in. Ryan pulled aside for questions, Victoria's story unraveling under cross-examination, the lender's web exposed in preliminary probes. When the judge returned, her gavel fell once more, the sound definitive. Custody granted to Ethan Harlan, pending full adoption. The evidence of neglect is compelling. The bonds here speak louder than paper. Case closed. Relief washed through the room like rain on parched earth, the crew erupting in subdued cheers, hands clapping Ethan's back as he lifted Lily into a hug. Her laughter bubbled free, light and unburdened, the locket swinging between them. Victoria stood, eyes downcast, a nod of reluctant acceptance before slipping out with her lawyer, Ryan trailing like a shadow diminished. Outside, the sun blazed high, the bikes roaring to life as the vow gathered, engines a triumphant chorus. Ethan mounted up, Lily in the sidecar, the wind carrying the scent of freedom, sage and chrome, promises fulfilled. They rode into the afternoon, the Nevada horizon unfolding endless, not as escape but as beginning. Ethan felt the scars lighten, Jake's ghost at peace in the rear view, the brotherhood tighter than ever, a family forged in fire, sealed in loyalty. Redemption wasn't a finish line. It was this ride, mile after mile, honoring the quiet oaths that outlasted storms. Lily's hand waved the bear like a flag, her smile the true legacy, and Ethan throttled forward, the eagle guarding them all. Thank you for riding along on this journey of unbreakable promises and chosen family. If Ethan's story of honor and redemption resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more tales that celebrate the quiet strength of loyalty.